On today's World Insight, to honor the brave men and women fighting COVID-19, today we look back at the brilliant minds from China and abroad who shared their wisdom from the front lines.
By 20, we claim virus finished those 3 steps. It's already efficient for human transmission.
We should take the people's safety to the first priority.
The single biggest danger is complacency, that people drop their guard against this disease.
Here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello, I'm Tian Wei, and welcome to World Insight. Today we bring you a special episode, Brilliant Minds, a comprehensive show of our previous talks with China's leading medical experts regarding COVID-19. First up is Dr. Du Bin, Director of Medical ICU from Peking Union Medical College Hospital. Since the start of COVID-19 outbreak, the National Health Commission has dispatched several medical teams to Wuhan, the epicenter of China's COVID-19. One of the most prominent was high-level expert team that confirmed in mid-January that human-to-human transmission was occurring. Dr. Du Bin is one of this 6-member expert team. Together with some of the top epidemiologists like Zhong Nanshan and Yuan Guoyong, they work hard on curbing COVID-19 spread in this country. Dr. Du shared his experience on what we have learned from ICU operations in Wuhan on his very last day there before leaving for northeast part of China. The COVID-19 is going to have an impact on almost all major organs of the body. So for someone who is working in an ICU, critical conditions of the patients, how would you be able to work on all these very different fields all at the same time?
It's a tough question. Yeah, it's very common for us, the intensivists, ICU doctors, to take care of patients with multi-organ failure. But however, there's always 1 or 2 major causes of the multiple organ failure. So when we look at the treatment we provided to these patients, that we can divide it into either the definitive therapy, which is the targeted therapy of the primary causes. For example, for viral pneumonia, for bacterial pneumonia, we'll use the antiviral agents or antibiotics to treat the infection. This is what we call the definitive therapy. On the other hand, we also implement several, life-sustaining treatment or supportive therapy to correct the hypoxemia, to correct the, other organ functions such as circulatory shock, such as the acute renal failure. I would say this is a common task we have performed in daily work in the ICU. So whenever we are treating critical patients with COVID-19, we're still doing the same.
About the failure of PCR tests, and as a result of that, how should we understand the current process of testing and also the current data coming from all countries?
Probably I'm not the right person to provide the answer, but however, as far as I know, the false negative rates with regards to the PCR test for the novel coronavirus here in Wuhan is approximately 50%, or
That's
even higher.
50 you're talking about,
some
isn't
of the
it?
reports, case series.
Yeah.
Yes, 50, yeah, 50%. And there are multiple explanations for this. The technique of the sampling and the site of the sampling. Yeah. Because even in the guidance issued by the Ministry of Health, that they recommend that you should sample the lower respiratory tract, which means that you should obtain the sputum of the patient. But however, as far as we know, that majority of patients, especially during the initial phase, they they only developed dry cough without sputum. So which means it's very difficult for you to take the sputum of the patient. So in some of the cases, we have to perform the nasal pharyngeal swab or oral pharyngeal swab instead of the sputum for sample.
And therefore, when you heard about those who want to be tested will be tested, will those campaigns be able to really help policymakers be able to make the right decision?
The only way to stop, as far as I can see from our experience and from the experience of the other countries, the only way to stop the pandemic is that we should know who is the patient, who is the close contact, and so that's why I should say test is the only way, the only approach. Although it may have the false negative or even false positive results, but this is the only way.
Yeah.
We know that PCR is not perfect, but anyway, the serology test, which is the test for antibodies, might be a supplement, good supplement for the PCR test. But anyway, whatever methods you use, you have to tell who is the patient and who has the capability of transmitting the virus to other, healthy subjects.
Right.
That's the only way, and you can isolate those patients and prevent the disease from spreading to the community.
Having said that, though, Professor Du, you were a member of the high-level expert advisory group of the China National Health Commission. Now, that group has played a crucial role in determining human-to-human transmission, whether that exists, to what degree, and also a crucial role in the decision of whether so-called to lock down Wuhan. Tell me more about your earlier time experiences.
In my mind, is that the so-called high-level expert team only existed for 2 days.
Yes.
And we stay here in Wuhan, I think that's on January the 19th, to have an interview with the local healthcare authorities, as well as to visit both the Wuhan CDC and the Jintan Hospital, which is one of the two designated hospitals at that time for patients with COVID-19. When we stayed here, we had the conclusion that the disease was a human-to-human transmission, with a disease with the capability of human-to-human transmission. But however, even that kind of the conclusion was made even without the information from Wuhan, which means that we have two experts from Guangdong province. One is Professor Zhong Nanshan, one is the Professor Yuan Guoyong. Both of them knew a family cluster, which was in Shenzhen, I believe, that a patient, an index patient, went back from Wuhan to Shenzhen and transmit the virus to the family members. This is a signal to us that this is a human-to-human transmission disease. So even without the information provided here in Wuhan. So during the interview with the local healthcare, both the Wuhan and the Hubei province, we know that there are some hospital-acquired infection happened here. So this is a confirmation of our previous conclusion. So this is a very easy conclusion to make. And with regards to the recommendation to lock down the city, which is not obviously not a decision on our level. No. It's a decision made by the government. But however, we do make the suggestion that you may encourage the people, the general population here in Wuhan, not to leave the city, and you should also recommend the people outside Wuhan not to come here. So that's one of our suggestions to the government. That is during the report to the central government on January the 20th. So when we were in Beijing, yeah, we raised the suggestion.
Welcome back. You're watching a special episode of World Insight, The Brilliant Minds. The COVID-19 epidemic is a major public health emergency that has spread around the world. So what is the virus and how similar is it to the rest of the coronavirus family? For this, earlier I interviewed Dr. Gao Fu, director of the Chinese CDC. Since the start of COVID-19 outbreak, the National Health Commission have dispatched medical teams to Hubei province. In early January, the NHC confirmed that the outbreak was caused by a novel coronavirus. In mid-January, a high-level expert team once again traveled to Wuhan to investigate and conclude that human-to-human transmission was occurring. And Dr. Gao Fu is in the interview trying to tell me about his earlier remarks on human-to-human transmission. Take a look. How much more do we know about it since January?
What I can see from this is the 7th coronavirus infecting human beings. 7th. We already have 6 we know it's infected human beings, but none of them really behave like this. This is really a special one. For example, from first, the incubation period can be as long as 14 days, even longer. And the second, for the virus city, and you might have the virus really, can last for more than some reports say could be a month or something. That's like a chronic, like a chronic disease, a chronic virus.
When did you travel to the city of Wuhan?
On the 17th, the commission decided to have a senior advisory group to go there again. I'm one of them. We have 6 members, including Dr. Zhong Nanshan, Yuan Guoyong, Li Lanjue, Zheng Guang, Du Bing. So we went there, and I think we got together in the evening of 18th. So we went to the hospitals and we talked to the doctors and all this. On the 19th. On the 19th morning. Yeah. And in the afternoon we have a group meeting. Of course, we already got the conclusion. It's clear.
On the 19th, during the afternoon meeting, was there suspicion of human-to-human transmission being collectively expressed by the expert group, which you are part of it, to the authority? And later, of course, we know Mr. Zhong Nanshan, during even a CCTV interview, talked about that possibility.
Yes, and we discussed that in the meeting in the afternoon. Already as Dr. Yuan Guoyong already mentioned about this, and also Dr. Li Lanjue mentioned about this. Yeah, of course, we discussed this human-to-human transmission. By then, we also realize it's already very efficient human-to-human transmission. Not just there is human-to-human transmission. You look at, we know that's human-to-human. The only problem is the seriousness. How serious? So for that special senior advisory group, when we see the whole series. So once we got there, we were talking to a lot of people. We already have some suspected clusters, but by then we have some clear cluster cases already there. So I think for that there's no doubt. So when we were interviewed, we had this press conference in the evening, 19th. I said, and of course Dr. Zhong, everybody said, about 5 hours there. I said in a press conference, this virus, of course, because the origin of virus, everybody thought it's from the animal, so it's already finished its job. I call the job, quote, we call it animal to human, and then limited human-to-human transmission, and then human-to-human. By then I said, already they finished by 20th we claim the virus finished those 3 steps. It's already efficient human-to-human transmission.
Right.
Okay. Most of the cases, they are from that market. That definitely directs you to investigate in that particular market. You realize all these patients, they have some connections. Of course, even from the very beginning, you have one or two, some cases, they have no, I call it no evidence to have a direct connection with that market. Pay attention to the word I'm using, evidence. So you look at, I remember one of the patients from the 27, no close, but when you talk to the patient, when you do this investigation, it looks like there might be some clue. He or she might have some connections.
So, Dr. Gao, please help me with it. Have you ever said in public that it is not human-to-human transmission?
That's a very good question. I never said anything about there's no human-to-human transmission in the public.
So I want to put this on record. You have never said that before in public.
No, I never said no human-to-human transmission in the public. Never, ever.
There have been debates about what should be the priorities in terms of an outbreak of disease. I understand you and some of your counterparts from different parts of China have been writing 2 important articles and published in the New England Journal of Medicine. One is about the virus itself. The other is more about how it transmitted and what are the realities.
For more than 3 to 4 centuries, the scientists, the public, the whole people in the world realize publication in a peer-reviewed journal is the best way. That's still the best way because whatever you are seeing, it must be judged first.
By your peers.
By your peers.
Exactly.
Your small field peers. You already know some of them,
That's why they have peer review, actually.
Exactly. All the scientists should realize this. If you have any idea, if again, this is for the science. You have hypothesis-driven science. Knock your head, say, not it. Oh, well, I have an idea. This is a great idea. Can my students work together? We have a solution for our cancer world. That's hypothesis-driven. And also you have descriptive science, like the investigation. The 2 for us, that's descriptive. We don't have any hypothesis. Here's a disease. Okay, go to investigate. We did the investigation. Here's the result. Describe whatever you found. Those 2 papers is descriptive science. It's really not some scientific breakthrough. Most important is hypothesis-driven is a breakthrough. But this kind of is a breakthrough, but descriptive science.
Got it.
So this is why we need to get published in a peer-reviewed journal. One is peer-reviewed, and then it will be the public, of course, like we discussed earlier.
So, Dr. Gao, what's next from now on?
It looks like now we are facing the pandemic. The virus is in more than 200 countries. I would quote Dr. Taizu's word, say, solidarity, solidarity, and solidarity. We need to unite together, everybody in the world. So let's work together. That's the next. And so make sure everybody understands what we are doing. Everybody is involved in this activity.
Welcome back. This is Brilliant Minds, a special program of World Insight, our series of interviews with outstanding figures in combating against COVID-19. As the situation stabilizes recently, China gradually lifted the lockdown in many provinces, and we've seen big cities lower the COVID-19 emergency response level. So what is China's strategy in the next phase of fight? Earlier, I had an in-depth interview with Professor Zhang Wenhong, who is the head of the Center for Infectious Disease at Huashan Hospital of Fudan University in Shanghai. He is also the leader of Shanghai's anti-COVID-19 clinical expert team. Let's take a listen of his thoughts. What do you think are some of the most important things that we need to do now here in China for the prevention and control?
在中国已经度过了一个非常黑暗的时期，也就是说
China has come out of a very dark period. At present, there are basically no local cases in China. Many cases are imported. In other words, China has now transitioned to the second phase. In the second phase of prevention and control, our approach is mainly to prevent imported cases. The number of imported cases may not necessarily be large, but there is a difference between the second and the first phase.
是跟第一阶段出现了一个不同的一个差异点。
The difference is that there are some people who have been infected with the virus among the people returning to China. Their symptoms are relatively mild, and others are exposed to these cases are at risk of infection. So we have several requirements.
第一个，从国家的层面，
First, on the national level, at customs there are sufficient barriers for imported cases. These techniques include virus screening and quarantining travelers for a limited period of time. For the general public in the second phase, the people are still in the epidemic period, so we must maintain good hygiene habits which are developed during the first phase. That means we still have to maintain a proper social distance. Masks should still be worn in places where people gather. We also need to wash our hands frequently.
尽量还是可以戴口罩，还有勤洗手。
I believe that by doing these three things well, we can prevent the second wave of the coronavirus epidemic.
Professor Zhang, one of the things people have been asking, especially from outside China, what exactly are the Chinese ways, or is the Chinese way? But many of us who are here in this country know there's no just one single Chinese way of dealing with COVID-19, but various practices. How would you compare, for example, where you are, Shanghai, with the city of Wuhan?
其实中国的经验，并不是说中国的经验可以，完全可以复制到全世界。
In fact, China's experience cannot be replicated. Take Wuhan and Shanghai, for instance. Both cities are in China, but they have different circumstances.
方式完全是不同的。我们武汉采取的就是 lockdown。为什么要 lockdown？lockdown 就是说这是整个中国的 epicenter。
The lockdown of Wuhan was because it was the center of the outbreak, and there were a large number of cases exported. Therefore, the complete closure of the city at the time would play a very effective role in the national epidemic control, and it would have a great significance for China and the world. This greatly reduced the number of imported cases in Shanghai. After the import ratio has been greatly reduced, Shanghai's prevention and control does not require a lockdown.
上海的防控就不是 lockdown， 我们是 slow down， 甚至于 shut down 都谈不上。
The measures at the time in Shanghai were a slowdown, not even a shutdown. So what does a slowdown mean? We just slowed down the pace of life.
尽量的 stay at home， 尽量的待在家里。
We suggested people stay at home as much as possible, wear masks when going out, wash hands frequently, and maintain social distance. Some entertainment and leisure places, such as restaurants, temporarily closed, but supermarkets, hospitals, banks, and other essential businesses remained
公
open.
共的交通给限制掉了。所以在这种情况下面，对于一个城市的 slow down， 对于
We only restrict public transportation. So in this case, this can slow down a place where the number of cases is not very big, and the local economy and people's lives are not greatly affected. This is somewhat similar to the current epidemic prevention methods adopted by Hong Kong, Singapore, and other places. It blocks the import-type ratio. People's daily grind slows down. If the epidemic flares up, it may have to transition to a shutdown. If it becomes an epidemic center, it may require a lockdown.
成为一个 epicenter， 我们可能就需要 lockdown。
So, Professor Zhang, what you said is extremely interesting to me because there's one ultimate question that is, how would you judge as to what approach to take?
事实上呢，就是我们在疫情的一个发展过程当中。
In fact, there will be some clues during the development of the epidemic. From the perspective of a city like Shanghai, the first phase in the development of the epidemic is imported cases.
如果 imported cases， 我们也就是输入性的一个病例。
At this time, if you can effectively prevent and control imported cases, it will be very successful. However, there may be negligence in the process of this phase. This negligence means that you have guarded the gate, but the small door is unguarded. Like the United States, China was blocked, but it did not notice the cases from European countries. Then came the second phase, and the outbreak in the U.S. suddenly boomed. At this point, the second phase of the outbreak is imminent.
我们给你一个提示，我们得升级，我们得 upgrade
A stricter prevention and control strategy than before is necessary. It is also very difficult.
我们要对所有的 imported cases 进行 tracing， 我们进行追踪。你如果追踪得到
because we need to track all imported cases. If it cannot be traced, the epidemic will spread further in the community, or even spread among communities.
另外一个小区里面。
The number of cases will climb slowly at the early stage, and more cases will be difficult to trace later.
到越来越多的它的 cases 你找不到，这个时候我们对整个城市采取的策略就是逐渐的从 slow down 要过渡到 shut down。所以现在
At this time, our strategy for the entire city is to gradually transition from slowdown to shutdown. I believe that experts from various countries will take corresponding measures according to the situation of their own countries.
我相信各个国家的流行病学专家也根据自己国家的一个情况，会采取相应的 response。
Ever since the outbreak of the coronavirus, China has sent aid to countries around the world, including the hardest hit European countries, Italy and Spain, as well as throughout Africa and Asia. The aid is in the form of medical supplies and also experts with experience fighting COVID-19. As more countries are struggling with the coronavirus outbreak, China is also sharing its containment practices. But is China's strategy applicable for the others? Will there be a resurgence in China, many wonder? How can China handle the uptick in imported cases? Earlier, I talked to Dr. Zhong Nanshan, China's leading respiratory expert. Let's listen in. You were in Wuhan on January the 18th evening, if I understand right, together with some of the other experts invited by the Health Commission.
Yeah.
Then you went with some of them to different places in Wuhan, the market,
Yes.
a hospital, Jinyantan, and also the Wuhan CDC. And then you guys had a discussion in the afternoon, if I understand, on the 19th, about what to propose and whom to propose to. But what was exactly the nature of that discussion on the 19th January afternoon? At that time, were possibility of human-to-human transmission being discussed? And who did you say things about that to, Professor?
I just asked some questions. One, how exactly many patients are there in Wuhan being infected? And the second, whether they had some patient dying. And the third, whether they have medical staff being infected.
And then you talk about human-to-human transmission on the 20th in an interview with CCTV, if I remember right, Professor. But before that, did you talk to the policymakers about human-to-human transmission possibilities?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
So in the morning of the 20th January, so I have a meeting with our VIP person, and I talk with that. I think that's once the human-to-human transmission happen, that will be a very serious situation, serious disease. Okay. I'm glad our governor and the VIP, they accept that.
Professor Zhong, another important question
and
is...
then subsequent, and then they had taken some very strong action.
Talking about strong action, Professor Zhong, the lockdown of the city of Wuhan, that was beginning to be implemented on the 23rd of January. Now, who proposed the lockdown of Wuhan? You or somebody else, or collectively?
Yeah.
And whom do you propose that to?
I think...
what time did you propose it?
Well, I haven't discussed with my group, because I'm the head of this expert committee group. So haven't discussed with them. So most of us agree with that. So we should set up a policy of northbound Wuhan. I mentioned about the principle is don't go to Wuhan and don't leave Wuhan. So that's what my subjection.
So it is a collective proposal if I understand right, you just said. Is that?
Of course, of course.
Got
After two months of practice, it's like totally correct. So in this way, I remember, I think so the President Xi Jinping, he mentioned one word which impressed me very much. He said we should take the people's health and safety to the first priority. So in other words, this kind of action will make some, of course, great impact of economy. However, the leader said, the people's health and safety is the first. So I suppose the decision is correct.
Professor Zhong, if you were asked by, let's just say, your colleagues in Italy, your colleagues in New York, your colleagues in California, and your colleagues possibly in some of the Asian countries, what would you suggest to them? Will the China way, as you earlier pointed out, since the 23rd of January, be able to work for them?
I think principally, I think it should be. So because they are, at the moment, all the foreign countries like in Europe or as well as in United States, they have set up this kind of policy. So they call that the lockdown, the cities or some others. But exactly, so not down a city is not useful. So you block the change, the communication between the cities and other cities is not it's not the main point. So you have to so I just now mentioned about so keep distancing. So people inside the city, as I heard from some of the foreign countries, said, well, we lock down the city, and then inside the city, people just, in particular young people, just join together, attending parties or some banquet or meeting, and it doesn't work. It's not locked down. So we lock down, the concept will be going to the community setting. So keep at home and to avoid to contact other people and not attending the meeting and not attending the banquet. That's very important.
So, Professor Zhong, if you had the chance to talk to Dr. Anthony Fauci, of course, the US CDC people, so, what would you suggest to him?
If I discuss with him, Anthony, I think he will agree with my point. Because Professor Lipkin, he quite agree with what I mentioned about. First is trying to, it's not in the whole country, just like now in the United States, just an outbreak in California, in New York, and some Massachusetts, New Jersey, and some places. But however, I mean, in China, so at that time, at the very beginning, just outbreak in Wuhan and Wuhan area. So not happen in other area. So we cross that down. It's very useful in dealing with that acute infectious disease. The best way, the oldest way, and the best way is to isolation. The isolation.
Yeah.
So if I talk with him, I think they should take the same policy, because he's a well-known epidemiologist.
What do you consider would be the biggest danger facing China today in terms of resurgence of COVID-19?
Yes, I suppose the most important risk factors will be import passengers. So because inside China, so we have not too many patients now infected from human to human transmission. So it's quite well under control. However, so now the importers is getting more and more. All of them should receive RNA test. That's the first. And then keep quarantine. So nowadays it's 14 days. And then maybe shorten. So that's we're going to see and try. Because more and more overseas Chinese will be coming back, and then I think that's a big problem for us. But anyway, so we cannot stop them coming back. So I suppose we need to think more way, in particular, so-called double check of the subject. and then I suppose we'll be more safe about that.
Another brilliant mind that we've talked to is Dr. Bruce Aylward, the WHO Assistant Director General. He led the team of international experts organized by the World Health Organization come to China to help investigate the country's COVID-19 epidemic early February. He told me for the world that hard lessons from China's experience are very helpful.
At a certain point, there was going to be a rapid decline in cases, and that's exactly what we've seen in China. And this is so important to the rest of the world because it's further affirmation that even when the situation gets what looks like it's quite out of control at some points in other places, you actually can contain this virus. So everything we've seen since leaving China is consistent with what we saw in the country and what one would expect. But it's very, very impressive, and it still is the standard for the rest of the world.
What do you consider still as the biggest danger facing China? Now, a lot of people have been talking about the danger of imported cases, meaning others traveling from abroad into China, and as a result, the spread of the virus. But Dr. Aylward, without stigmatization, of course, what is the biggest danger you think that is facing China today?
The single biggest danger is complacency, and this was something we talked about in China a fair bit, that people drop their guard against this disease. This is still the same virus that caused the situation we see and still dealing with in Wuhan. It is still a very serious situation and a very concerning virus that can wreak havoc. And the moment we drop our guard, a virus like this is going to take advantage. It's going to start to spread again. And one of the things that most impressed me in China was as I spoke to governors and mayors in different provinces, even though cases were coming down, they were still building beds, buying respirators, because they said, look, if this happens again or cases start to increase as children go back to school, as factories reopen, we have to be prepared for it. And I think the really, really striking thing in China is as you've had importations, you've found them quickly, found their contacts, got them isolated, and demonstrated again to the world that this is manageable, whether the disease arises from within the country or you get importations. But complacency is always the biggest risk when it comes to dealing with a virus, any disease, when it's in decline.
Complacency, complacency, complacency. You offered that advice days ago when you were in China. Now, how would you compare what's going on in the rest of the world? Now we know the number of confirmed cases have been rising very fast, and as you said earlier, things are happening fast in this epidemic. So anything they could do?
Yeah, absolutely, Wei. I think what we're seeing in the rest of the world are two, possibly three patterns, and it's not unlike what we saw within different areas of China. What we're seeing is sporadic importations in places, take Canada for example. They've had a number of cases, they're getting found quickly, they're quickly acting on them, following exactly the same public health principles you employ in China. And then we have a separate situation where we're getting undetected spread early on, and then that exponential growth which takes off and gets you in trouble. This virus moves very fast. It's that exponential growth that you're trying to prevent. And what we're seeing in Italy, what we're seeing in Korea is exactly that situation. But that's not the situation everywhere. A lot of countries have really taken to heart what they've learned from China, what we've been talking about. They're rapidly finding these cases, rapidly containing them, using the principles that China employed. They're not learning from scratch.
At the point when you were in China, do you find much evidence at all there were underreporting? Because the numbers are extremely important in terms of what measures to take in order to fight against the virus.
Sure. That's a really important point, Wei, because in the world I work in, there's two things are important, but the most important usually is the trend. are cases going down? Are cases going up?
Right.
What does that angle of increase or decrease look like? Because that's really what tells you what's happening to this virus. And the first thing I would say in China is that we have absolute confidence, and this is not me speculating, this is a group of international and national experts, independent of what happened in China, looking at different pieces of information and coming to the very, very robust conclusion that the decreasing trend is absolutely real, no question. Are you finding every case? No. We never find every case in a situation like this. But what you're looking for, again, the second thing you're looking for is not necessarily every single case. That has to be your goal, every case, every contact. But the key thing you're looking for is every chain of transmission. And the chains of transmission, they make themselves known very quickly because they explode with this disease. And the evidence from China suggests that you're finding the vast majority of chains of transmission, and you're finding them fast. There's a number of indicators that support that. So those are the two key things. What's happening with respect to the trend, and then what's happening in terms of the chains of transmission. Both counts, and again, it wasn't easy for China. You know, one of the things I learned a lot, and people were very, very honest. They said, look, we had to learn this, and we had to learn it fast. And we, you know, there were shortcomings, there were obstacles. Yeah, that honesty about some of the problems really helped me yesterday when I was talking to people running the Iranian response, people running the Italian response. You know, I was able to bring it alive in terms of what China was doing, and that really, really helped them.
My interview with Bruce Aylward. I still remember very clearly what he told me during the interview, the people he met in Wuhan and the sacrifices they have been making for the rest of China, and certainly for the rest of the world. And that will do it for this edition of World Insight, a special episode dedicated to the brilliant minds fighting the global pandemic. To find out more, you can always search us, World Insight CGTN, or check out our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter and Facebook. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the team, thanks for watching.